Welcome to No Question About That, talking about Ipswich 1, United 1. I'm Ed with Wayne. How's it going?
Yep, a great new era, and I am positively thrilled.
Ooh, sound it. Yeah, I mean, plenty of challenges with this one, clearly. I mean, Ruben Amorim said afterwards that they'd had 2 training sessions. It's understandable players didn't know what they were doing. Yeah, I've called out the unfortunate Johnny Evans. So, I mean...
Yeah, it was a little bit harsh. I want to think that he was talking about the player who would be asked to do that job in the role in the team, but it was Johnny Evans. It wasn't the player who's being asked. So like then when he gets brought off, you're thinking, oh, it's a little bit harsh when he's probably been the most consistent centre-back of the last season and a half.
He has been, but he's specifically asked to progress the ball out of in those wide areas. It's the old Terry Venables thing. He liked to play fullbacks in those wide areas of the back three. 1 for the sort of passing range and progression, and 2 like being comfortable in those kind of channel areas. And probably not Johnny's. I don't know. Not the best role for him anyway. I don't think we need to labour the point there, but he just mentioned him as an example, I think, rather than being a dick.
Yeah.
And generally speaking, I mean, you look at the initially when the team came out, an hour and 10 minutes before the game, as it does these days, and it could have been a Ten Hag side in a 4-2-3-1, couldn't it? But it was a Ruben Amorim side with a back three, and we saw that, and I was like, is it going to be trolling us? And it's actually going to be a back 4 after all these 2 weeks of debate. Yeah. But it was definitely a back 3. You saw it with Mazraoui in the back 3. It's not his natural role, but he's very comfortable. I don't think he did anything particularly wrong there. But a lot of players having to learn new roles. So just before we came on air, you said 5. So Mazraoui, Ahmad as right wing back, Bruno sort of the right-sided number 10, Garnacho the sort of left-sided number 10. We can talk about those 2. Rashford up top as the number 9. So, and Dalot as a left wing back, and he really struggled. I think took a lot of risks with his passing, and so like you kind of put it in that context. Yeah, it was a bit of a messy performance. Some good stuff, some stuff to work on. I guess we shouldn't be surprised.
Yeah, it was a very much disjointed performance because of that reason. I think a lot of individual errors within that. I mean, you mentioned Dalot. As I go through this list of individual critiques, I want it to be known that I'm attributing this to the system, and I'm not criticizing the players so much. Rather, I'm giving them the benefit of the doubt with this. Yeah, there were so many individual errors in that it makes you wonder. You know what my thoughts on a new system at United, and we've talked specifically about 3-men defences before and how United have struggled to impress them. It's not a natural system for this group of players, for a multitude of reasons. First being the lack of natural numbers of players to play in all of the areas, the quality that you want of players to retain the ball, which we don't really have, the quality of players that we have to play in front of a defence, which we don't really have. We've got good quality players to play behind the defence, and then ironically enough, the quality of speed to be able to get behind the defence. And we saw a couple of times with Garnacho, in all of the areas in which you wanted him to thrive, he couldn't just get going because the game didn't suit him. And so there was him. Obviously, Rashford is a 9. He's really, really struggled after that, after the opening goal. Ahmad was probably the most creative player, or the most, I say that. He had one flurry at the start, which provided the goal, and one flurry at the end where you thought it might have done something. And that was really what United had in the entire game. They didn't have a lot in between. They couldn't keep hold of the ball. And all of the things that we've seen in the defence with Onana, instantly retreating to Onana and doing that from forward positions. I think Xerxes, when he came on, there was one point where he looked around and he just went straight back to Onana. And that's not a Amorim issue. That's an intelligence issue within the squad. And it was there with Ten Hag. And before you and I have had this conversation, all these things systemic? And maybe they are, maybe it's lingering systemic issues there, but then when you see how difficult, they go back to the goalkeeper and they try and break out a defence. And like you said, it was very much a dominant three-man defence and where they were standing and where they were situated. So where Dallow's getting the ball, he's tight on the touchline, he's trying to move around, and he's doing two things. He's either trying to hoik the ball inside, or he's trying to turn and do a little bump in front of the player, and it was so obvious and transparent that McKenna pretty much figured that out from 25 minutes. And even when, sorry, just to finish the point on this, on the when they made the changes, because we don't have, there's not a seamless like for like either. Probably in a 4-2-3-1, there is more seamless like for like players, but in that kind of system, you are upsetting the balance of everything every time you bring a single player on, and we never got any natural rhythm because of that. Which you really want to put down to teething problems, but as we were saying just before I came on there, I worry because we've seen these things from these players before.
Yeah. I mean, before he took over, Amorim said it's a squad built for a different system. I think we've recognised that there are some weaknesses in the squad. We were speculating about who might play where. I mean, he went pretty brave playing Ahmad at right wing back. In fact, I mean, you could hardly call him a right wing back. He spent that much time forward. Anyway, you look at the average positions there; they're quite high up the pitch.
Yeah.
And Dalot left wing back. I mean, he struggled because, as you said, yes, he's trying to play the ball around the corner first time, highly risky pass. It is actually a feature of Amorim's side that they do that though. So that may be partly instruction. However much you can get into training sessions, and he's obviously not comfortable on the left foot really, so he doesn't tend to play the ball down the line. So that was a real challenge for him. The other thing Amorim said after the game was, I wanted them to be braver with it. And I think he's talking about the passing out the back there, and they clearly weren't, right? Often the simple ball into Casemiro or Eriksen with their back to goal receiving a short pass, in which case it often went back to Onana rather than turning and playing. Or just kind of ponderous and slow with the passing out at the back. And I think that will change a little bit when Martinez comes back into the side. Obviously, moves the ball very quickly. Even Harry Maguire moves it better than probably Johnny Evans would. A bit slower with it, Harry Maguire. But I think that changes a little bit of personnel. The left-sided left wing-back, I think, is a problem. There's just obviously nobody for that one unless Shaw gets up to speed nice and quickly. We'll see on that one. So some challenges, of course. Some players just aren't going to suit the system. I think they might not be Amorim-style players, and then he'll make an assessment at the end of the season. I mean, he's got a good 6 months now to think about some of this, hasn't he? And spend time with his players. And some will be systemic, and they just have to learn how to play under the new manager's system and what he wants. And I will see some players. The interesting thing, while we're going through players who, who may struggle in this system, just the one thing I was thinking is it's not obvious that this is a space for Alejandro Garnacho, which is going to be interesting to watch, isn't it? Because he's a player with such a high ceiling, but playing in that sort of number 10 role rather than a wide attacker. His use of the ball is probably the weakest part of his game, and it's really going to test that or show it up. It doesn't mean that he can't learn it, because I think his ceiling's really high, but we might see some inconsistent performances from him, I think.
Yeah. Well, or you find a way to devise that system where you manipulate to get him behind the defence rather than playing front, but it's such a heavy reliance on him playing in front of the defence. The other thing that Amorim said was that he was talking up pretty much more before the game, where they were talking about the intensity of the press. And I know that's a modern thing anyway. We know from United's issues with doing this prior to Ten Hag, because Bruno and Rashford have always been in the front line. It's not about, really, it's not even always about intensity. It is. I think it's mostly intensity, but big part of it is intelligence of the press, and the top teams get that right because they regularly put defenses. We saw it today in the Southampton-Liverpool game. The intelligence to put defenders under pressure to maximise mistakes, and United don't even put them in positions to make mistakes. And that's the first thing you want from this kind of system. All right, if you're looking at the qualities of the players, which we are doing to give them a fair chance here, that's my worry as well. He's not so much with Rashford, because I think he's had enough opportunities, but with Garnacho, there's an obvious higher ceiling than there was for Rashford at that younger age. And there are things about him, like you said, he's not the most natural dribbler of the ball. He can, but he's not the most natural dribbler, and he's not the quickest. And that system relies on both of those qualities being there for him. So unless you can manipulate to have the players around him where you get the best out of his strengths. But I'm sure that Amorim looks at that and he sees Garnacho as an asset and for that kind of purpose. But it's strange, isn't it? Because you sometimes then you look at it and you think, well, good players find a way, right? Like Ahmad, for example, that's a completely unfamiliar position, but he still impacted the game. He had all the positive moments came from him in that. Like you said, he tried to play that ambitious way, but it still worked for him in the way that he was supposed to work for him, because he's a good player. He's on bounce. He's really got the confidence going. So that kind of thing happens, whereas the other players who don't have the confidence, you could see that they're just the things. I think Amorim said he specifically mentioned 2 Ipswich players who were allowed too much time on the ball. He mentioned the numbers. He didn't mention the name. I can't think of them off the top of my head.
Murray Hutchison he called out, and one of the others who I forget. Yeah.
And he was right. He was right, because but you could see that in the pattern of the game, and you can see that again. Not to labour the point, but you can see that as being an issue with United historically.
Yeah.
So. It's a game, but if you want to look at a game when he's had such a long build, really, for a new manager, and you want to see all the glorious things that we've seen in the sporting team, and you want to see them translate to a team that has got technically capable players of doing that, and then you're reminded of the problems that we've got, which is just realism, really.
Yeah. I think there's a lot more to come from these players. I mean, Garnacho and Rashford are an interesting one, because obviously Rashford's been out of form for some time, but the system suits him better, I think, honestly, than it does Garnacho's natural talents, even if he's our top goal scorer this season, I think. Not saying much, because I think it's 3 goals. At least in the Premier League. Maybe Bruno's got more overall. But I think he's just going to take a little bit of adaptation, or he's going to have to use the ball more than just his carrying skills. So, what do we love about Garnacho? He's brave, right? He's very brave. He carries it great big, over large distances. He's very good in space. And he can score every type of goal. Now, he's a bit wasteful with it. Maybe that comes with time. Maybe it never does. Who knows? But you feel like the ceiling's really high. It's just in that role there, looking to use the ball smartly, interplaying between the number 9 in the channels and the wing backs. And it just kind of, today at least, exposed some of Garnacho's weaknesses, which is all mental and not technical, I think, and learning space and when to play the pass and when not to. And the classic one was where he could have just played the ball across for Rashford and just didn't, and got tackled in the second. Yeah.
The other thing is the uniqueness of the system. I'm trying to think of the right word there. The difference of it compared to what's the norm, the 4-2-3-1. So, very simply, 4-2-3-1. The effectiveness of those systems against another team who plays that system is the work rate and the intensity is how you're going to be able to. Why it looks on a pitch like some areas get outnumbered. Why the good teams always look like they've got one extra player in those areas and they're overloading is because of the intensity and work rate of that. Now, you want to see from the initial outlet of the outset of this implementation of this system, you want to see that, right? That's the first thing that you want to see. You want to see the players overloading in the areas to create spaces, because that should be the benefit of that system. We didn't see that. We saw you definitely saw a defined system. You knew what it was when you were looking at it, and you knew what they were trying to do. But there are also too many familiar individual errors that we've seen from the players. So and that's 2 or 3 days evidence of training with some of these players. So we've got to cut everyone's slack on that, the players and the manager and the coaching staff. But in the next few weeks, specifically because we're playing weaker opposition, we need to be seeing that. You need to be saying, all right, you've got to see that bounce from these players into that system. All right, it might be difficult for some to integrate, so you might see a lot of chopping and changing with that. But you want to see that system imposing itself on, you know what I mean? You want to see that system creating havoc against the what's the established norm, because that's the benefit of bringing in a different system. You exploit the weaknesses in the other system, and other teams are not prepared for the strengths of your formation. And obviously we didn't see that today. That's the disappointing thing. And what we did see is the familiarity of what Ipswich have got. Sometimes you've got lesser technically capable players, but because they've got the rhythm and they've got the familiarity, they can strike a much stronger game plan than what you've got. And that's what happened today.
Yeah, 2.5 years under McKenna, and you saw that in Ipswich's coordinated press. Very, very good, right?
Yeah.
Put United under tremendous amounts of pressure, and we weren't good enough to deal with it most of the time. Now, Amorim noticed that quite quickly, I'd say, and changed it around in the second half, and United were extremely dominant in possession in the second half. And part of it is Ugarte coming in to the centre to cover more ground, more available, happy to receive those simpler passes out of the back three. Wasn't surprised that Shaw came on either, to be honest. Just that ability to move the ball. He looked a little bit rusty as well. So, to be expected, he's had one full game in the last 10 months, and that was the final of the Euros. I think I'm right in saying that. So that one thing, McKenna, you're absolutely right. Familiarity with the system, Ipswich know their roles, and even though they've got a squad largely full of championship players, they were very competitive today. I mean, they shipped too many goals, and luckily they come across a team today that doesn't score any goals, even with 12 attacking players on the pitch at the end. The other point I wanted to make before I forget it, because you were talking about intensity, United ran 102 kilometres today, and that's the second lowest in the Premier League this season.
Yeah.
Right. So I'm sure he will look at that and go, what's going on there? Why did we lack this intensity? And that may be, I don't know, they're all off on international duty and coming back from miles away, maybe lack of familiarity with the system. And he said, a few of the players didn't know what they were doing, basically. That may be a direct quote, actually. I can't remember whether I'm paraphrasing there. But so I look, plenty of caveats. We haven't even talked about, we haven't really talked about the game as of yet. First half, I think Ipswich gave us a runaround, honestly. And I know we scored after, 81 seconds?
Yeah.
Very, very nice moves. Ahmad, brilliant.
Clean, very, very clean. Yeah. But it was the very mark of a goal scored against an opponent who was still trying to figure us out. You know what I mean? That, they just sort of all right, we'll just wait and see. And because it was so clean, in fact, that Marcus doesn't even have to think about it. It's very much like Salah's goal earlier. And sorry to keep talking about the Liverpool game, but it was the first touch. He almost accidentally, very good first touch. That's how good he was. But that's sometimes what happens.
It's good finish. I'm not hearing any criticism of the finish.
No.
I will hear criticism of the pass because Ahmad shanked it, basically, but it worked out all right. So, but it was really quite dominant in that first half, I thought, in terms of imposing their style on us. And it changed around the second, gave me a lot of hope because I'm not sure that Ten Hag would have changed it that quickly. And he had a kind of blind spot, didn't he? He'd leave it way, way, way too long when everyone's screaming for a couple of obvious changes. And so there were those changes, and it had a big impact. They had 70-something% possession in that second half, and had much more control without really creating anything at all.
I think the thing that disappointed me with that is that when United were in the doldrums under the last management, like when you switch management and you go like, all right, well, you've got to put the safety batteries on for a little bit. So because things have been so rocky, you go safety first and you just sort of steer yourself through. I don't think we ever got to that period. Everything was just flat, right? I don't think it was ever the case where this is too kamikaze. It was just like, well, it was, I mean, in parts, but not to the point where you needed to go like, all right, well, we need to pack the defence. We're shipping way too many goals in that kind of thing. We need to pack the defence. We need to go safety first, and then we need to build from there. That's what you normally see when the management era ends and something like that. Well, we weren't like that. So it was kind of disappointing. And Amorim did reflect that in his post-match interview. We were too safe. But I mentioned Xerxes doing it. Everyone was doing it. They were turning back and they were cutting through two lines to get back to Onana. And Onana, in his way, to be fair to him, was pushing up to the well out of his area in the end. And it was frustrating because that's the disappointing thing that we've seen. That's the limitation that we have seen of this side. So to see them revert to something that was so limiting, and we know that it's limiting, it was too safety first for me. I'm like, well, this is unnecessary. You don't need to do that. You need to be turning, like you said earlier, it was all backs to the play. Turn, face the opposition, be braver in what you're doing. Like, literally just take Ipswich's attitude to it. And I think there's one thing I don't understand. Maybe you'll articulate it at some point, Amorim, but he keeps talking about the game. He says, like, well, first of all, the game. Do you know what I mean? I'm like, well, no, explain what you mean by that, because that's the one thing you don't explain. You explain everything else beautifully. The articulation is great. We all know what he's saying. We all know the message he's trying to deliver, but he says the game, like play the game. Well, what do you mean by that? Because it can't be, maybe it is just bravery and maybe it's the confidence of taking the game by the scruff of the neck, because we just didn't see that. Yeah.
It's principles and identity. He talks about this a lot. So principles and identity first, technical parts of the game model second, I think, with him. I think that's what he wants. And if you look at Sporting, they play the ball forward a lot.
Yeah.
And I think that's what we're going to see from this team once he's had a few weeks under coaching them. I'm sure. And those old habits of going backwards and being, and maybe it's habit and maybe it's like some PTSD around the 18 months of poor results that have kind of created this. But you're right. The first time he went mad today, Amorim, was when Christian Eriksen got the ball off De Ligt, and he didn't turn with it and he just played a ball backwards, right? And you could see Amorim on the touchline going mad about it. And then it's a bit hard. I mean, obviously we're watching on TV, so we don't get to see him all the time. Those at the game may be able to give us a different take on this, but I got the sense he was probably a little bit frustrated with some of the stuff. But again, 2 sessions. What was it Vincent Kompany said in the summer? 100 sessions before you really get to work with this team. I don't know. I mean, don't know whether we should take Vincent Kompany's word for anything, really, but it stuck with me, that one.
Yeah.
So
it's a fair point.
3 months' time, like in the spring, I think we'll get a real sense of what this team looks like. And then, it's not bad timing. I don't want to write this season off because it's so close that Champions League qualifications very much within United's gift. It's just you can't throw away too many games from this point.
No, exactly. And they've told everything that's around the decision to bring him in is built around this, because there was that's the reason why Ten Hag went, right? That's the reason, is that we were concerned that wasn't going to be achieved. So, and that much better was expected, because the one thing you can, don't want to labour over the previous reign too much, but the point that Ten Hag made many times, and he was right in saying it, is that there was, at the end of it, a trophy at the end of every season. No matter how you got there, there was still a trophy at the end of the season. Now, we know that the progress wasn't good enough. However, that's what we've invested in this time, right? We've said it doesn't really matter if we go through the bloody roller coaster again, but we end up with a trophy. That's not what matters. What matters is stability and
quick progress,
quick identity and progress, and it needs to be Champions League qualification. So we've established that. So the pressure's on for that, as well as everything else. But the thing is, I like about him so far, he's unflappable in terms of understanding that that's expected of him, and I think that that's right, because he's saying every single game he should win. And we've talked about that message before, right? In a more overt way, when Ten Hag was 5-6 months into his reign, he just kept naming the same team every single week, and that came with a massive plus because it was its own consistency, and it developed consistency of the team. Now, obviously, the thing that you want to hear a manager say is you want to win every single game. That should be the aim of every single football manager. So it's not that's not reinventing the rule book so much, but it's good to know that he's saying, all right, short-term focus, this is what we need to be doing. And saying today it just wasn't good enough. Great, because you want to see there's a danger, and a real danger of him coming out after that and saying, oh, well, the one thing he says, the lads tried. You could see that they were trying. It just wasn't working. So, and we know that. We know that's evident. But he could have easily gone, like, because he's from Sporting. He's not used to all this media blue. He could have easily just gone, I think they really applied themselves well today and they were unlucky. He could have easily said that, and we could have all gone, oh, no. There's not luck in that game, sir. So he's been for a manager to be so young and relatively inexperienced, to be so bold as to say these things. I think all of that trajectory, sorry to labour the point and just get around to it, is that the minimum will have to be Champions League qualification, because that's the standard that he's setting, and he should be. He should be.
Of course, I mean, Sporting on 12 games this season. He knows the standards, and he'll get very used to the expectations. He'll get used to the expectations at United very quickly. I mean, I tell you one thing: he will not have faced 18th place in the Portuguese league and face a team as intense as this. And like, welcome to England and how competitive it is, And that's not to belittle the Premier League at all, but the concentration and quality in the Premier League is incredible. I said that on Twitter, and then I suddenly, at the back of my head, something said, fact check this, someone's going to say you're a twat. And so I had a look, and they beat Forens 5-0. So I was like, whew, phew. But you can't say anything on the internet without someone correcting you. So
you're on solid ground, considering he's won all his games this season. So that was the thing. That was fair. The point's obviously there. I mean, I go back and forth over this one, because I say it so often that the Premier League is generally weak, but the concentration of the competition from 2nd to 20th is very strong, and its comparative quality to the European leagues. Where I still think it's poor in terms of Premier League products, but there's no denying that the English league is far stronger than any European counterpart. So that stands to reason that, he will have been surprised by that as well.
I tell you what, one thing that's never happened to Ruben Amorim, and I can say this without having fact-checked it, is I don't think he's ever lost 5 on the bounce. Pep.
Probably safe, considering that his career in management is so short, but
it's been about 6 months. Well, I'm only just exaggerating there as well. Dear me, we have had some fun with Pep losing 5 in a row, haven't we? I mean, you got to take it where you can, because, obviously, the retort from City fans is treble, 4 leagues in a row, and all that kind of bollocks.
But don't even need that, dear. You need the depressing, crushing realization that with every celebration of a goal scored against them yesterday was the realistic proposition of Liverpool winning the league.
No, I know.
And I've marketed very clearly on this podcast before that I don't want Arsenal to win the league, but there's no one now praying for Arsenal to get their crap together than me, because they've got to start looking like a proper team, Ed. So I can't enjoy it in the same way, because I'm now going, is state ownership really that bad? By listener, viewer, I'm joking, obviously, but when you look at the history that's at stake when with Liverpool and Arsenal, and by the way, I wouldn't At least I would rather have the rivalry the Liverpool United way. Far more, I'd far rather that than the City Arsenal rivalry or the City any other rivalry. The sort of sanitized nonsense that we're seeing these days and the lopsided sporting integrity nature of it. So I'd rather have it.
I know.
You can't, the language that I would use. So no, forgive me, Ed, but yesterday was like, ha ha ha, Spurs. Especially when it was 4-0 and that was worse than what United had against Spurs. I was like, ha ha, this is hilarious. I'd be like, oh, well, it's not really hilarious. But even before the final whistle, I was like, oh, God.
I know. And I mean, it's something about the history of Liverpool. They have a lot of boosters in the media. Ex-Liverpool players seem to be very good at like tub thumping, like cheering on Liverpool, and ex-United players are all like bitching and moaning about United. I don't know what it is about ex-players like this. So there's an awful lot of boosterism of Arne Slot, and he may well be a very fine coach. It's really hard to say at this stage, like 12 games into a season, but he's got this team playing very well. Unfortunately, last time you'll hear me praising Liverpool on this podcast, at least this episode. But there's an awful lot of it now because they've had such a good start to the season, and others are struggling. Both Arsenal, who weirdly went to this strangely defensive system, more defensive than they were, and it doesn't seem to work for them. And obviously, City falling apart once Rodri was injured. So, anyway, don't want to. I'm sick of hearing praise of Liverpool. I try to block it out, and he just talk about bitching about United. I was really hoping we win today. Obviously, just hope we win all the time, and it's more hope than expectation these days. But just particularly because it was Amorim's first game, he just won such a positive start. And it's been a very positive introduction to the club, just because of his personality and his confidence and his aura, as my 7-year-old would say. My 7-year-old's like constantly telling me I have no aura, no riz, and I lack sigma. Fuck off! And I was like, you're a beta cuck. Now fuck off out of here. Yeah, no, I didn't say that. So anyway, yes, he has much aura, Ruben Amorim, and you want that to translate into results as soon as possible, right? Because you don't want the Manchester United of all of this to get to him. And I don't think it will. I think, especially given we've got a decent run of fixtures coming up, that there's going to be opportunity to work on things he wants to work on and just be able to beat some crap teams anyway.
Hopefully, because if we don't, then obviously that's a bit. Yeah, I mean, I'm not saying that I'm not any happier about the result, but in the perspective of you don't really want a false stone, really. So it's good for him to see the reality of the situation straight up. That he can see the issue straight away. So that's a good thing, that he can see that and identify that. You don't want him turning over Ipswich 3-0 and just going, all right, well, Rashford scored a couple, so there's no problem with him. Bruno set up on and scored a penalty or something. You go, everything's all right there. You can see the systemic issues with the quality of the players and their attributes and how they fit into that system. The thing is that, like I said, with the substitutes, because they weren't like for like, because they were the way that they fit the system was so different, and they were asking different things of the unit as a whole. And when the player comes into it, that when you look at the other players still to come in and the combinations of the other players, like Casemiro and Agata starting, or where does Manu fit into that? And
straight in the team, that's where he fits in.
No, exactly. But the point is that these are things that we've not seen yet. So we are going to see them, and hopefully that system problem will sort itself out.
Well, he did try 2 combinations today on both sides of the pitch, because he swapped Bruno and Garnacho around in the second half. Yeah, right. Which I thought was interesting. So you got Mazraoui, Diallo, Bruno first half, and then it swapped over, and obviously it was Evans and Dalot, not Dalot, and Garnacho in the first half, and then it kind of swapped around. So he's going to play with those combinations, I think. I mean, I know it's not Mascherano's natural position. We'll see whether he tries him at wing back or not in one of these games. But I do think his general all-round intelligence, ability to defend, intelligence and passing, it's not a horrible option there, honestly, when we've got some injuries defensively. Anyway, we'll see where he ends up. I just like him as a player. Right? I think he's intelligent enough. He could play almost anywhere on the pitch. Maybe not as a number 10 as Ten Hag had him.
No, but
the other side of the pitch is more of a worry for sure. The left side of United's, like in terms of both defensively and build up. Martinez is going to help defensively and with the build up, I think.
Yeah.
And then he'll have to make a decision on who is the best fit. Like, does he play someone inverted like he did today, or does he play a left footer on the left side? Because he has said that before, left footer on the left side for those wing back positions. He wants that.
Well, I think when you look at that system, the way that it was today and the balance of it, and the imbalance of Dalot in particular, I'm not talking about his performance, but the fact that he's right-footed and had to move in, and he was very specifically trying ways to move for the ball, and Ipswich cottoned onto it very quickly. You are going to need that balance there. I do think that unfortunately means that you're going to have a left footer there.
I mean, they tried in one of the training sessions that they released, to which everyone got a boner for, 2 minutes and 30 seconds of clips, and they were like, let me give you a 25 tweet thread on this.
Yeah,
Anthony played a wing back in one of them. Sorry. Yep. Anyway, I was going to come back. I was just looking it up while we were chatting. The running games. I was like, it's a pretty easy set of games. It is a pretty easy set of games up to Christmas, except Arsenal away on December the 4th. That'll be an interesting one. And City away on December the 15th. And Spurs away on December the 19th. So maybe I have to revise my thoughts about that one. I mean, apart from that, there's a load of crap in there, in theory.
The home run, at least, looks fairly comfortable.
Yeah. There are some decent home games. But anyway, whatever. I mean, we know it's going to be competitive. And this is just what it is. The powers that be made the decision to change the manager midway through a season and not in the summer. Who knows why they made that decision, but they did. So this is what we're left with. I'm not feeling too negative about it. Honestly, I think I like this guy. He's got the charisma that Ten Hag never had, and that goes a long way. Now, it doesn't mean shit if he's not very good at coaching the team, but I suspect he is. I suspect he knows what he's doing. And so
hopefully,
for those reasons, I feel good about it. But we've had this 6 times now, haven't we? Since Fergie left, that we're feeling, this is the guy. So, yeah. What do you know about Bodo Glimt?
Did we, in our staff purge of the summer, did we get any of their stuff?
I don't.
Feels like a club that we would have pilfered staff from. Well, I know we didn't. I know it was Rosenborg, but I don't know. I know that they've played English clubs before. I do know that. The one thing I hate about this, one of the chief things I hate about this ridiculous rebranding of this competition is that you only play teams once.
Yeah.
Right. So you don't build any kind of European camaraderie or relationship with club. You don't really get an opportunity. And what is that all about? Just playing a team once. So we're not going to play them on their own ground. We're going to see them at Old Trafford. It's not going to be the same kind of feeling as you would normally get. And we've already experienced that in this. It's twice I nearly swore on this podcast. My language is very good. I don't do that.
No, you don't.
This competition, it does my nothing. It really does. I hate it so much. Well, the way that they've changed the opposition and the competition, and I don't know enough about them to really give an educated comment. To be fair, I did study the last time.
I know nothing. They're top of the league. I know they've had some good results in European competition in recent years. I mean, they annihilated Jose's Roma a couple of seasons back,
that's the thing I remember about them. Yeah.
Quite amusing, gotta say. Enjoyed that one. I mean, I looked through their squad. I don't really recognise any of the players, and I like to think I'm reasonable football hipster. I'm not James Horncastle levels of football hipster. Or Danny Last, if you know him off Twitter, he goes there on all those Euro away days. So I'm not quite at that level, but I like to think I follow football around Europe, and I'm not too clued into the Norwegian league. Sorry. As we do have quite a few listeners in Norway, I see from the stats. So I apologise for that, fellas. But
been too busy watching Ruben Amorim's training session to, you know what I mean? That's the problem. Is that it's just being given, well, not just you, I just mean the entire United content has just been Ruben Amorim. You can't even look for anything else. You just that gorged with all this beautiful Ruben Amorim content.
For backers this week, 4 hours of detailed tactical breakdown on. Not quite. Well, okay, what we can say, pretty important that United win this one. I mean, there's actually no guarantee that we qualify. I mean, the top 8 qualify directly. The next 16 play off against each other, seeded as well for the next 8. I mean, I don't know where you'd stick 2 extra fixtures in February, but you'd have to find some space for it somewhere.
Yeah.
Would be challenging, I would say, given the nature of the competition.
Yeah, but it points to me that this, just the nature of the way that it has, I don't know what the current agreement is for it to last in this kind of way, but all of the intensity is being sucked out of the group stage. It
has. We'll see in match weeks 6, 7, 8, like whether it suddenly starts to feel intense because you'll be looking at the table and trying to work out the permutations. I mean, look, United got 6 points. I think the guesstimate is 15 gets you into the top 8. So that's 3 wins in the next 4 games. Looking at the fixture list, you'd go, yeah, all right, can do that.
Yeah.
I mean, like, it's not high quality, but it does start on Thursday night. And so if United don't win on Thursday night, it's going to look really troubling. I mean, it would be, so down to 24th place. I mean, you'd really have to be quite bad not to get into that playoff. Like really, really bad. Yeah. But maybe United are that bad. So.
Yeah, well, they're not. Obviously, we know that, and I know you've been flippant there. They're not that bad, but this is, of all the little challenges that are in front of this manager, and I say the big one this season is getting into the top 4. I hate saying that, but that's the obvious one.
Or winning this competition.
Yeah. Well, what I mean is
you win this.
The secondary, I suppose, but I mean, the more immediate one is getting out of the group with the fixtures that you've got available. So if you don't, it's going to look very terrible because it's not even the entire group at this point. It's like, can you get the 3 wins out of these remaining games? And on paper, you say, yeah, absolutely. But then there's the other things like you mentioned the 3 away games that we've got in December. Now, all right, a tough run of games. You're not going to expect at this point, you're going to say, oh, we're going to win all 3. But you know that you'll be judged if we don't because of the fact that we've got a terrible away record, and that, you know what I mean. He's got to get some kind of statement result. So what I'm meaning, the bigger picture being 6 months, you want Champions League qualification, however it comes about. But the smaller picture, in terms of all the way that the press are going to, he spoke about it after the game, didn't he? The level of press attention that he's just not used to. Well, yeah. The mountains that are made out of molehills at United in particular, those are 2 specific instances, the rest of the group and the away games that we've got in December, that he's going to have to kind of navigate with a moderate degree of success. And I don't know what that is, how that is represented in the away games, but it has to be qualification from the group. Now, I'm not saying that if we don't win the Europa League, that's a disaster necessarily, but from this position. But I think the fact that there's 4 winnable games in the group, And we've had such a disastrous campaign in Europe over the last year and a half that he's going to have to lay down a marker, particularly because he's done well in the Champions League this year. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
he's going to have to look like he's the difference. So, yeah, it's a big task for him.
So, Victoria Pleasant, Bodo Glimt, Rangers, and Steaua Bucharest, right? Of those teams, there's no quality there at all, right? Like in the bigger macro picture, and not to disrespect all these teams and so on. But three of them are ahead of us in this group, and Victoria Pleasant are only behind us on goal difference, because we actually have a positive goal difference in European football, believe it or not.
Wow.
I know. Not at home. All right. There you go. 1-1 versus Ipswich. It's no disaster. We could be a real crisis club. We could be Manchester City. 5 losses in a row, 115 charges, and the new Premier League rules on associated party transactions went against City and their little cabal of scumbaggery clubs, including Newcastle and Aston Villa. Aston Villa, who, by the way, are basically being bought off, which the owner's private equity fund having some interesting state sponsors these days. Yeah. Follow the money, as they used to say on The Wire, and you'll see where that one has gone. Anyway, that's a real crisis club. United, we're almost back. Thanks a lot, everyone. Bye now.